What's up, everybody? Metal Dave here, along with my co-host Jason McMaster, bringing you another episode of the Talk Louder podcast. Today we are joined by Chris Gates and Patrick Muzingo, two of the original members of Junkyard. And we asked them to join us so that we could look back and pay tribute and celebrate the memory of their singer, our friend, David Roach. David, of course, passed away at the beginning of August of this year. He fought a long battle with cancer, and the battle was maybe longer than a lot of the public is aware of. And we don't need to get into all that, but the point is that David was loved by many. He left us with a great legacy of music, and for that reason, we wanted to get some of his former bandmates on the show to maybe tell us some of the stuff that maybe people don't know or aren't aware of, memories that only they would share as bandmates in Junkyard. And I know, Jason, you've got history too.
Good way to expose some history that may or may not be connected to all of us. Finding out how small the world actually is, and hearing Chris and Pat talk about it together and bounce off of each other for an hour was like watching a documentary. So I front row seat, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, paying tribute to someone who we've lost, who we care deeply about, who will be missed. But I'll leave you with this. It's best to feel them as though they're just in the other room watching TV or reading a book. And I'll leave you with that.
Yeah.
That's where David is to me. He's still living next door, Dave.
Yeah.
He's just right there. It's
cool. One of the best days I ever had with him was he came over to my house and spent the afternoon sitting on the couch and just telling stories. And we were just talking. And I mean, it was just two dudes talking. And I'll remember that day forever because it was so much fun for me to hear him tell the stories, much like Chris and Pat tell us today on this episode. David was a really special guy, a great sense of humor, great way with words. Never took himself too seriously. God knows he had no ego. And we were all very, very sad to say goodbye to him. We had a memorial gathering for him here in Austin a couple weeks ago, and the band flew in from L.A. Brian Baker flew in from New Jersey. So it was a good hang and a lot of brotherhood and a lot of love in that room. And I'm glad I was honored to be part of it. So anyway, we hope that all of you watching and listening will get as much out of this as we did. David was very much loved and will be missed, but as Jason just said, he's always with us, and he's always with you if you're a Junkyard fan. So Patrick Muzingo and Chris Gates today on the Talk Louder podcast.
Hey.
Yeah, guys, thanks for joining us today. It was great to see you recently. I wish it had been under better circumstances. We're here today to talk about our friend and your bandmate, David Roach, who recently passed away. But I don't want it to be all gloom and doom and sad, because David wouldn't want it that way. And if there was one thing he was known for, among other things, it was his sense of humor. So I hope we can cover all the bases today. Let's go back just a couple weeks, though, when I did see you at David's memorial. It was here in Austin, Texas. It happened at a location where he spent a lot of time as a kid playing in this, basically, as we say here in Texas, at a watering hole. So it was just a place out in the woods that had a pond and some pathways through it and everything. I've lived here for 30 years and I never knew that was there. And I've eaten at that restaurant across the street plenty of times. So I thought it was a beautiful place for the celebration and the memorial. And I was thrilled at the turnout.
It was nice. It was really, from a kid from Southern California, it was like, wait, we're going where? we're going to a watering hole. I'm like, is there a handicap entrance or something like that? What's going on here? But no, I mean, just knowing, I mean, getting to know the history of that creek. I didn't know any of that. I mean, I know Chris did because I mean, Chris was part of that, but I didn't know that about the family, and then they all worked at the restaurant and how it was just so. I mean, as soon as I got out of the car, as soon as me and Baker, Mosier, and Muscat got out of the car, it was like a sense of like, oh, there's a reason. It's like we breathed it in. It was like, oh, there's a reason why he's here. The energy was like there, you know. It was, but like I said, from a kid from Southern California, I'm like, are we going to a well? I'm like, did you fall in a well as a child?
And there was somebody at the thing made the comment that people in Austin tend to complain a lot that old Austin is gone, but like we were there, you know, and those weird little swimming hole places that it feels like you're in the middle of nowhere and you're right smack in the middle of a neighborhood, right smack in the middle of town. And kind of your experience walking down there with the rest of the guys, Brian and I talked about it later about like, because David and I grew up in very similar situations. I grew up right off of 29th and Lamar, and right across the street from where I was another part of Shoal Creek and a swimming hole in the whole 9 yards. And so we had this very parallel upbringing of, you know, it's a little bit Huck Finn right in the middle of town. And Brian was going like, well, no wonder you guys are how you are. You know, like, no wonder like the connection that you and Dave have is because you're really guys from exactly the same place. And, you know, the rest of us like didn't grow up in a place like that, and we did. Right. So,
yeah, and we're talking about Brian Baker. Brian flew in from. He lives in New Jersey now, and I was really surprised to see him. Pleasantly so. I thought it was really cool that he hopped on a plane and was here to be part of that. You know, as part of the original early Junkyard lineup.
I would say he was the instigator on getting myself, Mosier, and Muscat down there. I mean, I believe the text that Brian sent to Tim was simply one word: rally. And it was like, oh, and at that point, I mean, I'm going through a bunch of stuff myself with some family issues and stuff like that. And I'm like, I don't know if I can make it. And then I'm like hearing from Baker, it's like rally. I'm like, oh yeah, I got to make this happen. This is, I mean, if it's going to happen, it's, you know. I
feel bad because I got to hug on everybody, but Baker, I guess, I mean, he must look different. I mean, I looked up and I didn't see any. I just was trying to like maul whoever flew in for it, and I just missed Baker. I'm sorry, Brian. I'll give you a virtual hug now.
Yeah.
I've met Baker once at a Warped Tour, courtesy of our friend Chris Gates here. But it was brief. So this was really my first time to get to know him a little bit, and it was just a pleasure to hang out with him. And more importantly, I just thought it was really cool that, you know, he hasn't been in Junkyard in years and years and years. And I think that says a lot about David.
But, you know, being in Junkyard is kind of like being a skater. Like, I haven't been on a skateboard since 1983 when I broke my arm so bad I might not be able to play guitar anymore. And in my heart, I'm still a skater.
Yeah.
And, you know, like Brian may not have been on stage, but he could have been at any given point if there were time. It was never like he just couldn't. When we got back together, he couldn't because he was busy with other things.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it wasn't like he hasn't been involved in help. You know, we've always been talking. So
yeah, I mean, he's always, I mean, from you know, like whatever era you want to call it, like the modern era as opposed to the legacy era or whatever. He's never been the guy that's been like fuck you guys or whatever. It's always been, if I can fit into my schedule, I will be there. And it's even like on the later stuff that we did on High Water. I mean, a lot of that stuff that's Baker. You know, it's Baker.
He was right. He was writing. He was involved. Right.
And even on the record that we were doing like during COVID and stuff like that, where we got to a certain point with tracking, which eventually it'll come out. There's like 8 songs that I think are salvageable. I mean, Baker's on all those. So
awesome.
and Chris will be on those as well as, you know, I guess we'll put Jimmy on, you know.
Yeah.
Of course,
well,
Jimmy will be on.
I like the way Chris put it. Once a Junkyard guy, always a Junkyard guy, and I think it showed. And back to the memorial service, Pat, you had mentioned the connection that family had to the city of Austin.
Yeah.
I mean, they all knew somebody who knew somebody, and it was really impressive how connected they were. And, you know, in sort of along those same lines, I was really impressed with, and again, pleasantly so, the outpouring of international love that came David's way when he passed. Because let's face it, we all love David, but Junkyard was never a household name necessarily. And to see that kind of worldwide outpouring was really, it was heartwarming.
It was, I mean, Chris got to see it firsthand. I mean, the first tour that we did, the second tour that we did properly overseas, I mean, the first tour was with the Almighty, and the outpouring that we got from the UK fans was insane. And then the first time that we went to Spain, when we did the festival, I mean, we flew over and did one show, and it was like, it was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, we were the kind of band that everybody hadn't heard of us and stuff, but the people who liked us really liked us.
Yeah.
You know, I got a buddy named Chris Ward, who's a drummer here in town, moved here from Kansas City, and Chris was talking about everybody in Kansas City was playing thrash metal, and everybody's playing thrash metal, and he kept trying to describe to them what he wanted to do, and then our first record came out, and he just made them all listen to us, go, no, this is what I want to play. And like, it registered that way with certain people, and you know, David was the face, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, the face and the voice, and what a hell of a face and voice. I mean, it's at the time where it was, you know, pretty boy guys and everybody wearing lipstick or whatever. You got this natural looking guy from Texas with, you know, the bleach blonde hair who doesn't give a fuck about, like, you know, I'm not wearing the fashion of the fucking month club or whatever. I'm not going to, you know, Hollywood Boulevard and get my shit. I'm just grabbing shit that I have that's just accessible.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of how the band came together, was like, I'm trying to find people to play with, and nobody out there, they look at me and go, that dude's never getting anywhere. And I'm running into Pat and running into the other people. It's like, all of us knew each other from our punk bands.
Yeah.
So there was a shared experience from 1980 to 1984, 85 that those rock dudes didn't have.
Yeah, they didn't.
And there was like no chance that me or David were ever going to be comfortable putting on some kind of a front. So we just had to figure out, what is it that we do, and how do we amp that up just a little bit so we're comfortable in it. You know, we didn't have a wardrobe trailer. We got up in the morning and put on our clothes, and that was our wardrobe.
Yeah.
You know? We turned it inside out and wore it one more day.
We're lucky we had a closet. I mean, shit. I mean, Chris, you lived in a closet. That was your wardrobe.
That was the troll under the stairs at Texas West. Yeah.
Chris, you told a great story during the memorial, the memorial gathering, about a lot of people realized that you and David left Austin and went to LA and became Junkyard. But I think a lot of people assume that you guys were already buddies and you went out there together and you were familiar with each other, but you weren't necessarily super tight, and you kind of bumped into each other in LA. And I like the story that you told about how the two of you realized that, oh, yeah, we need to do something. Because I think most people assume you went out there as a package.
Right. Like, I was out there, I don't know, 8 or 9 months before I moved. I was out there on tour with Poison 13. And the rest of the band came back to Texas, and I stayed and was hanging out. And I actually ran into Pat and Todd, and they told me that D-Cry was now Shanghai. And I went to a party and saw them play. And I went to some clubs and I saw Guns N' Roses play for nobody, you know, and was like, oh my God, there's rock bands in LA. So I came home and packed my shit, moved to LA, because there was no place for rock bands in Austin in 1985. And you could play a Kiss cover if you're drunk as part of the encore. That's about the best you could do. And
right.
So I moved out there, and I spent about 8 or 9 months trying to find somebody to play with, and I was just not having much luck. And I actually heard that David was coming out. I have no idea from who. And I spent a couple of weeks tracking down a phone number for him and called him up and said, I understand you're coming out here. When you get here, we should start a band. And so he said, okay. And I didn't realize he was bringing Max and Max's wife and Max's dog and John Howard with him, but great. And so they showed up, and that's how it worked out. And like, David's very first band, the Pagans, was a bunch of high school kids that formed a band because the big boys started putting flyers at Austin High School for all ages punk shows that all said start your own band, so they did. And the Pagans were one of the first ones that showed up, and they opened for us. And I saw David doing that, and then I saw him doing the Strupedos. And, you know, he had a quality, but like I said at the memorial, like the bands he was in didn't require that you be a good singer. He was just up there doing whatever. It's not like I heard him in his band and went, oh my God, that guy's voice. Like, who knew?
Yeah.
But something inside just said, call that guy. And, you know, we're 6 years apart in age. So, you know, we weren't tight. He was 15 when I was 21. So, you know, but when he moved out, it was just immediate. Like, I had already written most of the songs on the first record, and we started doing them. We started practicing, and there was some lineup changes until we could get Pat in, until we could get Brian in. But that format, the songs I was writing and that he began to co-write lyrics with, it just gave him a platform to really be who he was. Plus, we're in LA where everybody's going balls out and trying to be the very best they can be. And we're surrounded by rock bands. You know, and one of the beauties of that is you can go out every night and see all the things you don't have to try because that doesn't work, you know. And so it lets you get better quicker. And, you know, David just really blossomed. Like
That right there, sorry to interrupt, that right there made guys like me back here in Austin scared as shit to try to pack up the station wagon and move out there. All the things that not to try, you know, or why would I take a band like Dangerous Toys out there when there's 100 of them, right? It's like, you know, what we had happened to us is we got hit by a bus.
Right. Basically.
You know, it was like this crazy thing. The fact that you guys went out there and sort of stayed away from all of the, you know what I mean? It's like they turned on the lights and you guys were the ones that scattered, you know what I mean? And like you stayed away from all of that.
The thing that people don't know about the LA scene, though, is that like there was all that Sunset Strip warrant, whatever, post-doc and awful, whatever. I don't want anything to do with it. But what I wanted to play as a band was like ZZ Top and AC/DC with little bits of Ted Nugent and little bits of Lynyrd Skynyrd, and it was all this stuff that nobody was really doing.
And you nailed it.
But at the other end of a town, the town that I actually, part that I came up out of, the underground scene, there were all these other bands that weren't like legit ballsy rock bands, but they were awesome. Yeah. Like the Hangmen and Hard as Nails, Cheap as Dirt and Tex and the Horseheads. And those were our buddies.
Yeah.
And we could play those shows and go get an opening slot for LA Guns, you know, and like LA Guns and Guns N' Roses were really as far as we ever went towards any of the glam bands, and they're not really part of that hair thing either.
No,
but you know, but
there's, you know, during that era that, you know, during our time, I guess, whatever, you know, that the class of '89, whatever, there were some bands. I don't know how many of them were from Los Angeles other than, you know, the ones mentioned, the Hangman, and then, you know, a year later, Rhino Bucket and people like that were just dirty rock bands that didn't look or feel or sound or even talk like, or even go where, I like the way that you put it the best, didn't even hang out with all of the other things that were happening out there.
Yeah, what they wanted and what we wanted were not the same thing.
Right. Right. You know? But I always throw Junkyard in and I don't think that I'm far from wrong with Circus of Power and even a little bit Raging Slab.
Little Caesar, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Those bands were important and knew exactly, you guys could finish each other's sentences.
And a lot of those bands had guys in them that came up out of the punk scene the same way we did.
Correct. And it was not self-plugging here, but Dangerous Toys just kind of wanted to be part of that. But we were doing what we thought was best to get a leg up and write the songs that we knew how to write. But we always wanted to be part of, you know, the Circus of Power, the Junkyard, the Rhino Bucket, and we wanted to be dirt bags when we grew up.
It was basically like to expand upon what Chris said about, and what you're saying, Jason, about like, you know, Circus of Power, Little Caesar, Dangerous Toys, things like that. basically, we look. I had a bullshit detector on things. So if I see a band like, all of a sudden it pops up like Danger or something like that, no, bullshit detector, wang, 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 Circus of Power. I'm like, oh yes, they get it. And then, back then you couldn't hop online and do research. I'm like, who the fuck is Circus of Power? Where are they from? Same thing with Slab and all that and Bucket. And then you find out, oh, they came from the same scene that Chris and I did. Some people came a little later. Some people were a little older or whatever. But it was like, oh, wow. Okay, these are our people. This is part of our DNA. We're all ancestral here and when it comes to the music and especially the touring aspect. And like what Chris said, when Chris first came to town, I ran into him recently, just at a clothing store. And he had this idea, and that was when I was in that band Shanghai, and it was between punk rock and roll. And I was in a couple of bands that we had the punk rock in them, but we didn't have the rock and roll in them. And Chris just had this idea, and it was like, as soon as he explained it to me, I'm like, oh, this is it. It's just being a real rock and roll band in a sea of bullshit in LA. It's like, how many Paradises band do you have? How many, stupid, it's like we got Paradise.
Man.
Also, no, we're Paradise from fucking West LA. It's like, no, fuck you. You're all fucking Paradise.
Right, yeah. Good teeth and nice skin and expensive leather pants,
It was
a backer.
It was a little bit confusing when my earliest experiences with the Toys, just getting out there and picking up BAM magazine or whatever kind of entertainment rag that was out there that had, big haired pretty guys on the cover. I'm like, oh, what the fuck is this? And there was this, yeah, it's all ads for the same fucking band.
Same band, yeah. Like Hans Naughty. It's like, the best band in LA that never got signed. But I think, to be fair, I think they recently got signed as of like a year ago. So,
and it was that thing like, there were a lot of underground bands that were flirting around the edges of being a little rocking and stuff.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a legit, balls to the wall, rock band that wrote really well crafted songs. And I understood that, it's the music business. You have to be able to sell what I'm doing. And it ain't going to be because we're pretty.
Yeah.
So how can we package this thing that we do? Like, I have a branding and commercial art mind. It's always what I've done. So it's like, we need a logo. We need T-shirts. Literally, I went through this process of what does everybody in the band already wear that's just their regular hangout clothes? Yeah. Now, where's the area of overlap? Now, let's just do that when we're on stage so that at least we all look like we're in a band, and then maybe step it up a notch or two and go for it. And, making the jackets, the jean jackets, I made that for Christmas for everybody.
That was, like what Chris is saying, it's like, that was our production. Right. That was our major production. Well, we're going to wear vests, black T-shirts, jeans, black, it depends if you want to wear washed out jeans or black jeans, but as long as they're jeans, some kind of boot, but get the fucking vest on. So we have the uniformity.
Yeah. It's the denim version of the Ramones.
And that was about the extent of our wardrobe.
Right. Yeah. And I got a buddy here in town named Mio who lived out there and worked on Melrose and played in a band with Wes Arkeen at one point or another. And he was talking about being in a room with Wes and Duff McKagan, and they're all going like, those Junkyard guys, we love those guys. We don't have to do our hair anymore. And it was like, as soon as we started playing with all those bands and just doing what we did, it was like, oh, we finally found a way to do this that's not wearing spandex and assless chaps. And suddenly everybody's street rock. And it wasn't just us, but we were the ones that, we were as legit a rock band as anybody playing on the Sunset Strip. We weren't sloppy. We weren't half-assing. We weren't, we're not even trying. No, we're going for it.
We were also a type of band, back in those days, back to the bullshit detector factor, the bands that we played with, we never we were offered a lot of shows, but the shows that we were offered, it was like, no, we're not going to play with that band because that's not right or whatever. The shows we always played were they were an event. We didn't want to make a show. So the Coconut Teaser would be like Little Kings, things like that. Little Kings, Hangmen, Bash Crane, what's his name? Bash Crane Crunch Prop or whatever, Combos, man, fucking. And then us, it was, we always tried to facilitate a show based upon helping out our bros, but also basing it on, well, all of a sudden we get this guy that's want to do 6 ballads in a row. It's like, no, you're going to get shit thrown at you, bro. Get the fuck out of here. It's not going to work.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the way the punk thing was. Like, we're going to put on a show. We're going to put all our buddies' bands on there. It's going to be great. And, and we weren't just worried about, we didn't play the places where you had to sell tickets because we were never going to do that. So, but, you build you have a show that people want to come to and see everybody. Because it's an event, it's a scene. I'm not just showing up to see this band and leaving.
Right.
Yeah.
So
we wanted to make sure everybody stayed. I mean, whether we were playing last or first, it's like, especially like playing with Tex and the Horseheads, it's like, no, please come like early and plan to stay late because it's. I mean, the whole package is it's a lesson in itself kind of thing.
Yeah. I want to get back to David real quick. One of the things I'll always remember him for is his sense of humor. Each of you tell me your funniest memory of David.
Oh God. I'll start. Let's see. You know what? It was right when I just got in the band. I was very excited because it was the day that I decided to quit a band that I was in with a guy Rat's Ass from Tales of Terror and Joey from Verbal Abuse. It's a band called Pirates of Venus, and I was done. The day I get home, I get a message from my mom. There's some guy named Chris Gates is trying to call you for a rehearsal tonight. And out of the gate, I'm like, oh yeah, where is it? She's like, you know where it's at. It's at Sam's place. I'm like, okay. I knew exactly where it was. That night I showed up. That was the first night, basally. It wasn't an audition for Junkyard, but it was like
we didn't hold auditions. We invited people to join.
It was like you're in, and it's like, and my main point of focus was, I'm like, oh, I'm not only am I stoked, but I'm like, oh, I get to leave my shit here. I'm like, oh, I don't have to fucking pack it up. So at that point, me and David went out afterwards, and I think that was during the days of like Osco's Disco. Like I think Ricky had something going on. So me and David went out that night. And us being, I guess, at that point, the youngest guys in the band, we stayed out until 6 a.m. playing cassettes in my Datsun truck, doing things that basically kind of keep you up, after 2 p.m. and sitting right in front of Osco's Disco all night, just playing cassettes. And then even going back to the AM radio. And like, he was like, hit the R&B station. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? We have a rock and roll. And then he would just play it. And then he would try to sing. And then he would not try to sing along with it. He would sing along with it, which is kind of shown in our Ray Charles cover, just how versatile he was. And I'm sitting there in the front seat of my car, just going, oh God, this guy's fucking good. And I am like in a band where it's like, this is a band. And the second rehearsal I came back, I just remember sitting at Sam Mann's place. No matter how long this band lasts, I've got the best seat in the house out of every band I've ever been in my entire life. And all I see is a pinball machine of David going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I'm like, and I can live with that for the rest of my life because knowing how talented that guy was, just knowing out of the gate. Yeah. So as far as a funny story, well, that'll be in the book.
Right.
Now, like I first met David when he first started showing up, when all the 14 and 15-year-olds started showing up. And then I started going out with this girl who had moved here from San Francisco, and she had somebody break into her place in San Francisco, and she really wanted to live in an apartment with a security door. And there were no apartments in Austin with a security door in 1981. And there was one. It was a clothing optional apartment complex over in East Austin. And so she moved in there not to be a nudie, but because it had a lock on the front. So I'm going over to see her and her roommate, and there's a lot of hippies who it's only people who should never be naked who live in those places. Mm-hmm. And this guy with a Rolling Stones logo tattooed on the head of his cock, and I'm going, what's that like? It's going, well, I'll tell you what, don't ever do it. But then I find out later, I see David in there, and it turns out he's going out with this woman who's 15 years older than him. And she's got like David's 16 or 17 and she's in her early 30s and she's got a 9-year-old daughter. He's closer in age to the daughter. But like, but I show up there one day and David's sitting in the courtyard and she's up on the second floor throwing everything he owns down onto him and yelling and stuff at him. And he's just like looking at me and shrugging. And then fast forward, we're sitting in Texas West, me and David and Nick Ferrari, our roommate. And you know, it's early in the band and I come in and go, look, I got this song, this music that I really like, but it's too pretty. Like we're not right pretty. It's kind of a ballad. It's too pretty. And I sat down and started playing some chords for him. And Nick goes, oh, that's fine as long as you make the words ugly, like get your hands off my throat. And then David goes, ooh. And he starts telling us stories about that woman that was throwing his stuff off the balcony. And it just got funnier and funnier. And then me and Nick started trying to make it rhyme. And, you know, 10 minutes later, we're rolling on the floor laughing and we've got the lyrics to Hands Off. Yeah. It's like, but it was just like, and he would get tickled and then he would remember something else to tell us. And then we would laugh and we go, wait, we got to write that down. And yeah, so, you know.
And the beautiful thing about that is what became of that, which I would assume is you and Nick, is it became a waltz.
And it started as a waltz.
It's a waltz. It's not a ballad. It's an actual old school waltz.
That was the funniest thing because I brought it to practice and you couldn't figure out what the fuck to play. I was going, I don't know. What is, and it wasn't until you were trying to figure out the part and I started stopping and went, oh, it's a fucking waltz. I didn't know I wrote a waltz. I mean, I rode around in the front seat of my dad's truck through the 70s listening to country music, but I wrote a waltz in a rock band. Sorry.
Yeah. You were doing threes instead of fours.
We're the only hard rock band from the late 80s with a waltz.
And to be fair, I mean, I started out playing drums like in 1977 jazz, and the thing that I hated the most was a waltz. I was like, oh, this is the fucking most boring thing in the world to try a jazz waltz. And then this comes in, I'm like, oh, I can play a rock waltz. Oh, this is much better. Bonham.
It just took a minute for both of us to realize, oh, this isn't three.
It's 3/4. It's not 4/4.
What are we doing? Like, yeah. Most of David was really funny, but like a lot of comedians, the comedy was almost always sitting on a shelf of tragedy. Yeah. It wasn't just ha 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 funny light. David was not a light guy.
Yeah,
he was funny as hell, but it was always laughing in the face of most of the time.
Yeah,
yeah.
Or being really drunk and doing something ridiculous.
Yeah. I've always described his humor, humor is a word I use a lot to describe him, but in the same breath, I have to sort of qualify it by saying, his humor was very self-deprecating and sarcastic and deadpan. And, it wasn't, as Chris says, all ha, 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 and punchline after punchline. It was a little deeper than that. It was always hilarious, but he was almost always poking fun of him at himself or a situation. It was coming from a place that was agitation or something, and he was expressing the humor in it or whatever. He had a really unique sense of humor.
Something that David and I sort of clicked on, and I didn't realize it till years later, and it's kind of what you're talking about, is one of the things that turned him into a really good lyricist. It's the same thing you're talking about with the humor. It's like, it's not pre-prepared joke stuff. He's actually paying attention to what's going on.
It's observation.
And then something occurs to him that's funny about what he's seeing that nobody else has seen. And he says that thing. And I do that all the time. Mm-hmm. And so the two of us together were like, it's this observational thing. And like, I'd write a verse and a chorus and give it to him. And then he'd see what I didn't see in what I was writing and write other stuff that was like, oh, that's good and funny,
Yeah.
So
what also helped a lot was, to be fair, you, Chris, and David, you guys are so educated and smart. You guys read books like it was like, the new album came out. Well, I got to fucking read through this book. You guys were, the lyrics weren't just like because it rhymed. You guys had you guys had a background and things behind that, as far as like, spitting the words out.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that neither of us really recognized until later. But
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, I got sent, David and I both got sent, and I got sent to write with other people, especially other Geffen artists, to take their ideas and make the words better. And like, I didn't think anything about it. But it wasn't until years later, after I sobered up and started hanging around with a bunch of guys like Ray Wiley Hubbard, who were going like, dude, I've read your words. They're pretty good,
Oh, yeah, they are. Oh, yeah.
I'm like, there you go.
Yeah.
For a couple of kids.
and I think that quality that you're talking about in the lyrics, obviously it's sort of, it goes hand in hand with the Junkyard song, the sound. It's very genuine and street level, and it's all based on observation. It's not like David, I don't know, was ever capable of dreaming up a song. It had to be based on some sort of observation or experience. And if I'm wrong, please share the song.
That's funny you say that, because like I was living with Steve Earle after we finished 6s, 7s, and 9s, and I watched this. I had no idea what his history was. He was just this dude who was married to our A&R guy, and Copperhead Road had just come out. But I was watching this short documentary that had been made about him in Canada, and in it he made the comment that I like to think I'm smarter than most of the guys in my songs, and I went, wait a minute, I am the guy in all my songs.
Yeah, right.
But, kind of to your point too, is like looking back on it now, like I love 6s, 7s, and 9s, but looking back on it lyrically, it's a dark record.
Yeah.
It's very dark. Yeah.
Because all of the people we knew, all the people we ran with were starting to slide over the edge into addiction issues and alcoholism issues and other mental health issues that lifestyle exacerbated. And, the first record is really raw and really right there on the edge, but we're still laughing and having a good time. Mm-hmm. Drinking My Blues Again is still funny.
Yeah.
Drinking My Blues Again on the second record is
it's
I'm
giving
lost
the devil
and
his due.
I'm homeless and I'm dying.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's no wonder it didn't sell as well. It's a little dark. The songs are really good. The lyrics are really good. The songs kick ass, but it's not a party record.
Anytime that I tried to give David a heartfelt compliment, he would usually smirk, and he would never say thank you. He would argue with me.
Yeah.
Hey,
Try to explain to you why you're wrong.
Hey, David, you're looking great. No, I'm not.
No, I'm not.
I mean, that was that. Yeah, exactly. He would pretty much like ramble on and say a few extra sentences and be colorful about how wrong I am about how good I think that he looked that day. It could have been as just simple, like, well, not really. I took a shower. Maybe that's what it is. You know what I mean? He would have turned the coin over and go, oh, okay, I'll give you that.
Well, maybe today, but not yesterday.
Yeah, but he's not. But he's not going to take the compliment. And it was hard for me to be in love with him because of that. I wasn't going to get the love back immediately. He was going to slice and dice it and maybe, throw it on the ground and make me beg for it a little bit or something,
Hence what made him such a good cook.
Yeah.
He took the words and he basically just cooked them. And it was like, let this marinate for about, 24 hours as proper things need to be marinated, and then I'll get back to you.
And
Pat, you were there. I mean, obviously, all of us were aware of David's condition over the past year or so.
Longer than that. It was actually longer than that. Yeah.
Yeah, he just didn't deal with it a lot.
So. Yeah, and we decided not to make it really public facing until his wife kind of just said, this is really what's going on. And at that point, when we made it public facing, that's when, we took the professional side of thing. It was like, the doctors are telling you this. Okay, we know what's down the road kind of thing. So, of course, we had every intention, and every hope and every prayer and everything like that everything was going to go good. But, there was some good time. There was some good reports and bad reports as every cancer patient has to go through, and then there was stuff where it was stagnant for 2 months and we didn't hear anything. And then I get a text from like out of the blue. He's like, "Hey man, how you doing?" I'm like, "Well, what the fuck?" I'm like, "Wow, how are you doing?" You know, that kind
yeah,
of thing.
it was the same on my end. And
Yeah.
he got told he had something in his mouth that needed looking at 4 years before he even got looked at. He just couldn't deal with it. And you know, I've had two good friends who got cancers in and around their mouth and throat. It's always bad.
Yeah.
So, you know,
I remember
it's a hard way to go. I'm super grateful for Jennifer.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't even want to think about what his life might have looked like had she not been in it at that point.
Yeah. We would have been having this chat about 2 years ago, basically.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And it wouldn't have been pretty.
That was a widely held opinion over the course of the past year on social media, and especially during the memorial service a couple weeks ago here in Austin. I think everybody that loved David was so grateful and indebted to Jennifer. And for those who are watching and listening and aren't familiar with Jennifer, Jennifer was David's wife. They got married about 2 weeks before he passed.
Yeah.
And he had left Texas and was living with her in Nebraska for the past couple of years or whatever. So she became a very big part of his life and a very positive part of his life. And I know that myself, and I think I speak for all of us here, when I say that from a distance, we were all very grateful that he was in such good and loving hands at the time that he needed it most, because he was a long way from home. But in a way, he was also exactly where he needed to be.
No, I can't imagine. I'm grateful that David and Jennifer found their soulmate connection. You know what I mean? And they got a good year out of it together before, like, she basically had to become full-time caretaker. Yeah. And I've been in touch with her a lot, and like on the band's website or whatever, we're selling shirts and stuff like that. And basically, the split is going, you know, some is going to Jennifer and some's going to David's son Ray. You know, because Ray needs that's his kin, and as well as Jennifer is, you know, trying to make sure that everybody gets covered on that end. But God, I mean, she was just a saint. I'm grateful and I'm hopeful that she holds close to her heart the year that they had last year before this year reared its ugly head. Because this year it was just like, and there was a lot of other demons that David had to deal with while he was going through chemo that weren't pretty. I mean, it's, you know, addiction issues are a son of a bitch. And Chris, you would know this like a motherfucker. I mean, it's, you know, to go through chemo and then still not be clear and not have the proper support to deal with your alcoholism and all that. It's like, oh my God, man. I mean, the pain he must be going through at that point to hit chemo and then do things that are not going to help chemo.
Right.
It's like, when that happened, I was like, well, yeah, I understand. I get it. Yeah. You know, but it was rough that this last year, but you know, going back to the original statement, Jennifer's a saint,
and I'm incredibly grateful that it didn't go on any longer than it did.
Yes,
like I was pretty sure from the beginning this was the only possible outcome, and I'm really glad it didn't go on any longer than it did, because it could have drug on for a really long time, and I'm glad it didn't. You know, like I always say, like, he's better off and I miss him. And one of those is more important.
That's you said that at the memorial service, and that was probably the most profound thing I heard all day. And I heard a lot of profound things that day, but that stuck with me. You said that you're going to miss him, but he's in a better place. And one of those things is more important than the other.
Right. And I just got to remind myself, my relationship to death isn't like most people, but anyway. But one of the things I wanted to talk about too is like part of that outpouring, right? That the driver of most of that was like as a band, and David it wasn't something we made a decision about. It's just who we were. And I think punk rock was a big part of it. But like when we weren't on stage playing, we were out in the audience, and it didn't matter if we were playing at Raji's to 100 people or opening for Skynyrd in front of 18,000 people. when we're not playing, we're out front and we're talking to people and we're hanging out and we're being fans. And, David loved doing that, sometimes to a fault. But like in Japan, it would freak them out because that's not what you're supposed to do, but we're doing it anyway.
Yep.
And you get that combination of approachability that a lot of rock bands just don't have. It's not part of the world. And then you take that same friendly guy that you've been having a beer with and seems like you've known him forever, even though you've only ever seen him on MTV. And then you watch him get up on stage. And it's like this monster gets created as soon as, and for David, it was really like you count the song off and he loses his mind. And he sings sings unbelievably well, but he's careening around the stage and he's really dangerous with a mic stand. And it's just like he's in this haze of energy. And as soon as the song ends, he's like, and like getting him to talk to the audience was like pulling teeth. It's like, dude, you're the front man, talk to him between songs.
You got to sell shirts. Come on, buddy.
I can stage dive onto my head, but if I can't talk to them, but it was watching that transformation during the song and seeing that level of energy come out of that dude along with the voice and everything else. And then 20 minutes later, you sit at your table, you're having a beer. And you're like,
and you're like sitting there, he's like, oh, let's talk about like the weather. It's like, oh, wait, no, I want to talk about rock and roll. He's like, I don't want to talk about that.
When
the genie comes out of the bottle, but apparently he has off time too.
That's a union. That's a genie union. So
You mentioned opening for Skynyrd, and one of the stories I remember about David was it came up at some point when I was interviewing him, and it was when you guys had Black Crowes as your opening act, and so you were. I think it was their first North American tour.
Yeah, their record had just come out.
Yeah, so the Black Crowes are your opening band, and they're starting to rise on that tour. And there was a point where you guys were playing in San Francisco, and David tells the story that there was some chatter backstage about James Hetfield was in the audience. And I think David or the whole band or somebody back there was all excited that James Hetfield was in the audience. And David said, oh, he's not here to see us.
And he's absolutely right. Yeah, Hetfield was there. Yeah.
That was so David,
They walked right past us and went right to Chris Robinson and Rich Robinson. It was like, I mean, by that time, I mean, I think that was the last show of the tour. The writing was on the wall. I mean,
the first single had done well. The second one had just come out and was starting to explode. The ballad, whatever it was, and we got to experience what it was like to be Aerosmith on the tour that Guns N' Roses opened.
Right.
Because I saw the first and last show of that tour both in the LA area, and at the beginning of the tour, nobody knew who Guns N' Roses was, and that was like a 5-month-long tour, and it wasn't until 2/3 of the way through it that Sweet Child came out. And like by the end of the tour, like people were leaving before Aerosmith even went on. And I was like,
when you mentioned Skynyrd, and I was going to ask each of you, what was the moment for each of you individually when you had a moment with David where you were like, this is our career highlight. We've made it. This is the event. This is the moment. Do you guys each have a story like that where you guys kind of looked at each other and went, I can't believe this is happening?
I got a few, when we were in the studio doing the first record, when we were working with Tom Werman, who was one of the 2 or 3 guys I was interested in working with, and everything's going pretty good. It took us a minute to figure out how the fuck to do things at this level. And that was challenging, but it's coming together pretty well. And we've put the vocals on Simple Man. And to get David's vocals on that first record, we had to warm him up and then give him some beers because he would be so tense trying to do it right. He didn't sound like David, and then we had a window, right? We passed the window. We're 5 beers in. We passed the window. We'll sing some more tomorrow. But we got the vocals. We were finishing up the vocals on Simple Man. And I looked at Werman and said, I want to put B3 on this song. And he's going, well, what are you thinking? And I said, well, something like Al Cooper. And he went over to the phone and flipped around in the Rolodex and called and said, hey, Al, what are you doing tomorrow? And hung up the phone. I went, you just called Al Cooper? And like the next day, Al Cooper's there. And like, I know David was there and I was there and I can't remember who else, but like,
I think I was there. That was 56, Studio 56.
Yeah, and Al's in the other room putting the B3 on Simple Man, which already sounded good.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you got that organ on there, and like it's giving me chills listening to it and making me feel like, how the fuck did I end up in this room? How did that song I wrote in that weird loft space behind Die Laughing on Colorado Boulevard in Pasadena waiting to put a band together, and now this, and like we're looking at each other and we're hearing our song and his voice and our playing coming out of the speakers with that B3 being played by that guy. And it's like, how the fuck did we get here? Like being in the studio on our second record, and we're at the Captain and Tennille's place out in the valley, and they're making the second Wilburys record upstairs.
Yeah.
And the first Gulf War is on the television. It's happening. And all of the guys from the Wilburys, I think, except like Dylan came through and never talked to anybody, and Roy Orbison never, but all the rest of them came in at one point or another. And I remember being sitting on a couch making Jim Keltner tell me stories, and David's sitting there, and we're just looking at each other because Jeff Lynne is over there and George Harrison's playing pinball. And like, we're going, how did we get in this room? Pretty soon they're going to come get us.
I mean, it's funny because when you say that, I remember walking in because my parts were all done, everything. I just basically came out for catering, which was basically a free lunch and some beer. And I walk in and I'm like, there's some guy playing Miss Pac-Man. And I'm like, well, I'm going to do the old school thing that you do. I'm going to put my quarters up, even though knowing everything's free. And then he gets done playing and he turns around and he goes, so you want to play? And I'm like, oh, it's fucking George Harrison.
It's so weird.
But the surrealism behind it, like Chris said, we got the Gulf War going on in the background. But then all of a sudden, like a onslaught of Chinese food just showed up and a bunch of booze. And I'm like, and the baker walks in and is like, well, I got to go play pool with someone. And I'm like, who the fuck is that? It's like, whoever was engineering the Wilburys records. Yeah, we got a game. And I'm like, this is weird.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, we've hit that thing.
That's like living in LA, You're all the time you end up at parties and you look over and go, are we doing Sam Kinnison's cocaine? Like that's just living in LA,
Oh, fuck him,
And playing with Skynyrd, like, I grew up listening to those records and I saw him 6 or 7 times in high school and now we're on tour with him, and like Johnny's great. It's the first tour they've done with him as the singer, and as many of the original band that's still alive are on the tour, and they're super friendly to us. And they made a point of saying like, you guys may be the first band we've played with in years that people didn't boo. Wow. Like they don't want to see, they don't care about the opener. They just want to see us, but they at least tolerate you, which is a big thing for our audience.
Sure.
Yeah. And I remember sitting backstage and like, it's these guys from our youth. Yeah. And we're sitting in the same room and like they're talking to us like we belong here. And it's like, and you have those moments like we'd look at each other and go, just like, there was no like we made it moments. It was all like, how the fuck are they letting us do this?
It was It was like very strange having like breakfast with Gary and Dale Rosington. And like we're at catering and I'm like, this is the second day of the tour. And I'm just like, the first night of the tour, actually the first show that we did, there was some guy ran into a telephone pole. So Skynyrd didn't get to play. We got to play. Skynyrd got to play one song. Some guy ran into a telephone pole. Next thing you know, the lawn section is on fire. We're like, well, we need to get the fuck out. So then next thing you know, we're at some like Blockbuster pavilion and me and Todd are like showing our Blockbuster cards to get backstage. It was like, I guess that's our backstage pass, right? Or whatever. So we ended up showing up. And that was the first night that we actually got to see Skynyrd. And I remember grabbing David. I'm like, the first song is going on. I'm like, we got to go. Let's watch from the side of the stage. Grab him immediately. I mean, and we both were just staring. And it's like, we both had that shit-eating grin on our face going, it's not going to last forever, but let's not be assholes while we're here. Let's be grateful and let's just watch this until the end. 45 seconds in, security came and pulled us off the fucking side of the stage because we didn't have the proper passes. All we had was our Blockbuster card. And we ended up going backstage. And after that, Johnny came back and he's like, I saw you guys on the side of the stage. What happened? I'm like, all I had was my card. He's like, he looks at both of us. He's like, you dumb shit. And he just grabs his whiskey and walks off. And I was like, all right. But after that, we both learned our lessons. And a lot of nights, especially on that tour, I don't know why it was me and David. I have no idea. I would see him on the other side of the stage. We were like train spotting them big time. And for me, I was train spotting, the drummer that they had at the time, Custard, who played with Steve Earle. At that time, Artemis Pyle left the band for,
had a tantrum.
For other things.
Outside issues.
Who knows what the fuck that was. But no, I'm like, dude, you're train spotting fucking, him, and I'm train spotting him. Come over to the side of the stage. And we also had roadies to facilitate. It's like, bring us a case of the beer on the side of the stage. So we finally we watched half a dozen shows, like just not saying a word, looking at each other. And then when a certain note would be hit by like Ed King or Billy Powell or, or Leon, it was like, oh, we both looked at each other like, oh, fuck. It's like, wow, this is I guess at that point, I fondly look back at that as having a great classmate in a classroom. It was a classroom of two people. It was me and David, and we got shown this is how it's done.
Yeah. And one of the things about us that was always different, and it's just who we were. Like David and I were always this way, and everybody else ended up being that way too. We're just like, we didn't have any real ego about being in a band or being on a label. Like the first thing we did when we got signed was go make friends with the guys in the mailroom and the secretaries, because they were our people, and they were always happy to see us. And it was all, those guys loved us, and people would come up and expect attitude or give attitude. Like I remember playing an early show at Club Lingerie, and I had met Billy Duffy at some point, but Billy and Ian from the Cult were there, and Ian's doing his American Indian thing, which we all thought was hysterical. And he's backstage and he's giving us shit for being too drunk. And David's just looking at him going, what are you talking about? And he had long, straight hair at the time. And Clay was going like, that's a wig, dude. He's totally wearing a wig, dude. And then Clay reached up and grabbed it to try and pull the wig off, but it wasn't a wig. He was laying on the floor holding his head. His bandana came off, and we're all just going like, "Oh, sorry, dude."
Yeah, a big shout out to Clay. I mean, another rest in peace, former band member. Yeah. My roommate for quite a while. I mean, and David will attest to this from wherever he is. He's like, Clay was the badass in Junkyard. You did not fuck with Clay. No way. I mean, Clay took on security guards in Akron, Ohio. I would say about 6 of them because of a stolen 8-ball from a pool table that our roadie stole. And Clay was actually fighting the guys because he thought, he's like, we didn't steal. What the fuck are you talking about? I mean, right, that was 8-ball, not a real like cocaine 8-ball, but an 8-ball from a pool table.
Right.
Like, we were kicking him in the head.
Yeah, some giant rock club, and our roadies were loaded out. Both of our roadies, because there was a section that was walled off from the venue behind glass that had a bunch of pool tables. And they went over and put 50 cents in each one of the pool tables and pulled it, and the balls came out, and they'd take the 8-ball. Like our drum roadie had his T-shirt up with about a dozen 8-balls in it. And the security saw him and came chasing him. And they came running past and went onto the bus, and Clay was standing inside the door, and he didn't know why they were being chased. But you don't fuck with my people. So the security guy came to the door, tried to come on the bus, and got a fistful of boot.
Yeah, he kicked him in the face, straight up.
And then, like, we were all everybody else was already on the bus, so we just told the driver, just go. And we left. But just as we're getting on the highway, the cops are all streaming past towards the club. Like, and we've got a dozen 8-balls from some club. What are we going to do with those?
It's like, well, I don't know.
Yeah, we were capable of some pretty dumbass at the time.
Tell me, and I'm going to have to, unfortunately, I'm going to have to wrap up here in a minute, but I wanted to ask you guys, and I don't intend to end on a somber note, but this question I have here, and I definitely want to ask it, and that is, now that David is gone, what is it that triggers memories of him for each of you? Is there anything that happens during the course of a day, or a song, or a television show, or something that immediately your mind races back to David?
It's not all the time, but every once in a while something will pop up, or I'll be cooking something and remember, oh yeah, we tried to make this with almost no cooking equipment and the cheapest things we could find at the store, and like it didn't work, or it caught fire or whatever. But or just okay. little snapshot moments of like, oh, I remember that time, and it just those little things pass, or
yeah. I was just curious, Pat. What about you?
For me, it's he lives with me every day in a lot of things that I do. We had a lot of chats. When the diagnosis came in, we chatted a bit on the phone. And while the chats were like, they were more like business. I was like, we got to get this third album out. We got to do this. We got to do that. Memorial show. I'm going to be there, this and that. And that. Knowing full well, I'm a cheerleader, but I'm also a realist. It's like, I'm like, yeah, bro, we're going to do this. And he's like, and make sure that motherfucker doesn't come in and blah, blah, blah. And this is referring to like an old manager or something like that. I'm like, go ahead and get it out, brother. I mean, this is therapy. So I guess I had some therapy chats with him, but a lot of the things that we chatted about towards the end, and the last thing that I said to him, it lives with me every day. Not in a negative sense. It lives with me in the aspect of, forward motion. Keep going. Yeah. Keep going, motherfucker. Don't fucking, this is not, whatever, just keep going until it's my time. Yeah. And at that point, read as much as you can, educate yourself as much as you can, be as creative as you possibly can. And, all the creativity has been funneled from David to his son tenfold. I mean, I can see that creativity and I can foresee that creativity really even getting deeper in Ray's art. And he really passed on a wonderful attitude to his son. And so that really, David's family, Chris's family, you all are family on this. That's all I think about is this forward, giving forward, making sure everybody's forward motion and making sure everything is okay.
And the interesting thing for me is like, I don't really listen to my own music very much. I don't think anybody really listens to their own music very much. And I can't remember what the impetus was, but it started with pulling up Hallelujah, I Love Her So. And I don't remember exactly why. And this was before David passed, but I was just listening to it, and you mentioned it earlier, and just sort of marveling at the vocal performance. And this is a demo that we recorded for no money, and it's just amazing. And then I started pulling other stuff out and listening to it, and listening to it with the advantage of space and age. Yeah. And so I can separate myself from the player and just listen to it, and it's just like, wow, none of us really knew how good we were.
No, you're right. It was, like, for instance, like you mentioned, Hallelujah and like Hot Rod and a couple other songs. I mean, it's guttural, man. I mean, he's speaking, it's something that I'm happy they got it on tape because it's from the gut. It's like one of those things you listen to and it's like, oh, this guy means everything. And he is, exploiting it out from what every orifice known to man kind of thing. I mean, you feel it down to your, your stomach. It's like, the last time I had this feeling, besides listening to Hallelujah, was when Chris got back and and we did a West Coast tour where all of us got together and played. And I think it was the rehearsal before the last few shows that we did, where we were out in North Hollywood. It was really like fast and quick and, crazy. And the rehearsal that we did, it was that guttural feeling where David got on the mic, and for the first time ever, I could actually hear him because we're all so goddamn loud. But it was like, oh, I got that knife in the gut feeling, the good knife in the gut feeling. I was like, oh my God, I'm like having also from, again, back in my standpoint, having the best seat in the band, having to see everybody. Chris is there. Every cylinder was firing.
Yeah.
And it was that moment where I kind of reflect back to and try to grab that moment for the guttural feeling, which is very hard to find. It's very hard to top that high,
Yeah.
And that's the takeaway for me is like the rawness and the honesty that runs well below just the words, is for me, even though we're a loud rock and roll band, whatever, it's got the same intensity as a Guy Clark record or a John Prine record.
Yeah.
And and that may be part of the reason why some people love us so much and other people can't quite take it in, because it's more than they're asking from their rock bands.
Right.
But David was the head of that spear, Yeah. Without him, I could never have fully realized what I was trying to do. It was just the two of us. It was meant to be. I have no idea why. And I'm incredibly grateful for that.
Absolutely. So am I.
Wow.
That's beautiful.
Huge.
Yeah. Great memories. And I'm glad you guys carry that with you. I think all of us carry a piece of David with us. Some of us, we spent a lot more hours than others, but that's the reason I wanted to have you guys on the show today, Jason and I both. David's passing was tough, and I was so grateful for the outpouring of love from all over the world. It let me know that this guy that I thought the world of was also that loved by so many other people. And when I think of Junkyard, obviously, Junkyard never made it to the Van Halen or the Aerosmith status or whatever, but the genuine connection you have with your fans, and Chris said it at the top of this conversation, is much more pervasive than I ever would have imagined, and I'm so glad that it was that way, and I'm happy for David's family. I think we were asked, Jason and I, to lend some quotes, and I think Chris was involved too, to Catherine Turman's article in Billboard magazine. And the contradiction here is that we all are so appreciative of the worldwide outpouring of love for David, but we all know perfectly well he'd be the first guy to shrug it off, and he'd have like this aw shucks attitude towards it.
Yeah, people kept saying like, I wish he could have seen the outpouring, and I said, if it had happened, he would have dismissed it and not been able to accept it. It was just so out of line with his own opinion of who he was.
What did I say 20 minutes ago?
Yeah.
Exactly. Rewind the tape. Remember what I said? Yeah,
that's right.
He would have laughed his ass off at like all the viral moment that happened when he got married and then when he passed. I was like, wait, this was unexpected. Yeah. And I know he would be like, what the fuck is Entertainment Weekly reporting on me for? Who the fuck? They don't know me. And I'm like, yeah, actually, you're right. They don't know me. They don't know what the fuck?
Right.
It's a weird world driven by bots.
Exactly. Yeah. And to be fair, it was God, the outpouring on some of the like rando weird bot fucking accounts. I never saw a negative comment.
No,
it was whether it was a bot reporting it or myself reporting it or Catherine or yourself, David, or Jason or anybody. There was never
or Rolling Stone. Rolling Stone. Yeah.
It's like the evil people at Rolling Stone actually reported it and reported it twice. Marriage and death. And it was
we managed to get through our existence without leaving a lot of people who don't like us.
Yes.
Yeah. I think
Which says a lot.
In the entertainment business, that's a thing.
It says a lot,
especially
for you,
for lead singers.
It says a lot for you, Chris and David. For Chris's and David, their songwriting. I mean, because at the end of the day, it's really not about the individual, but it's about the music legacy that is left behind, which is, Chris and David
delivering the songs
and rocking the shit out. And then myself, Mosier, Muscat, James, Anthony, Gottlieb, fucking Johnny Howell, everybody was a part of that. And we hold that in our heart,
Yeah,
and,
even Tony Alva and Wino.
And Tony Alva and Wino and
the bass players who played with us while Clay was in jail.
Any random guy, Jamie, who sat in because fucking Muscat had a job. It's like we never chose from outside of our bubble.
Yeah.
To ever fill in for everybody. It was always family.
Everything felt together. Like, we knew we had to replace Johnny Hell, and Pirates of Venus were breaking up at exactly the same time. So it was like, we wouldn't have asked you because it's who we were. We're not stealing a drummer from our friend's band. But if you're breaking up, because that was a conversation, if you guys are breaking up, we would love for you to come over here.
But we had already had that conversation and die laughing. I'm like, as soon as I get my situations in order, let me punt and then join you.
Right.
That was always on my calendar.
Yeah. We talked about it before Pirates even came together, and then we lost track of each other. And the next thing I know, there's Pirates.
The first time I met you in 1985, I'm like, I want to play in a band with Chris, and I'm at Liberty Lunch, and everything is raining, and I just want to go home with Chris.
And you stole kegs from a frat party. That was good.
Exactly. Yeah. And lo and behold, here we are now.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you for joining us today and sharing your insight. You guys are OGs, from the Junkyard camp, and we definitely wanted to hear your thoughts, and we appreciate you sharing your memories. You guys spent a lot of time with David, and we appreciate your stories today. And
Also, anything that is said in the next interview with Muscat and Mosier, I would like to sign a disclaimer on anything.
Yeah.
About that modern era.
right of refusal of what ends up in
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you.
All right, man.
Thanks so much for joining us. On behalf of my co-host, Jason McMaster, I'm Metal Dave, along with Chris Gates and Patrick Muzingo today from Junkyard on the Talk Louder podcast.